only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. Again, what a week it's been. It was an amazing episode last week where I finally realized, with Neil Peart's help, that I needed to convey messages about what I was feeling and what I was seeing in another form other than just purely with words, but also with music. And it was very important to me that, since I'm a non-musician, that I could get some help in order to try to take the tinkerings that I had on my grandmother's 1898 piano and turn it perhaps into something that could resemble music. And even better, if it could actually turn into something that would bring out the meaning and highlight the emotions and the feelings that were in the music and the lyrics. And I really didn't know what would happen, but of course, like everything that's happening with this podcast, my expectations were massively exceeded. And I have to thank Esther in Spain, who is a wonderful, wonderful person who is a professional musician. And she immediately took my strange ramblings and turned them into something incredibly positive. So before we go any further, let's have a quick listen to the song that has now been called Proof of Grief. That title came to me again from Neil. It came to me, I think, 3 or 4 nights ago. And I think yesterday I put the words together on top of the music that Esther had provided me. You must forgive me because we're not professional, and this is a demo, of course. And when you hear the recording of the keyboard, it was just an electric keyboard. And I try to make my voice sound a little bit more spiritual, perhaps, by putting an echo on it. But it sounds quite fun, and I said I would share it with you, and I'll share whatever happens each week. So this is the recording that we made, and it's called Proof of Grief. How far do we go? How much more can we take? That's the question we ask while we learn the answers by mistake. We keep tumbling to the floor, and still we ask for more. Every tear, every thought is taking us closer to the reason why. But every tiny reason we learn that keeps us from losing our mind is bringing us to the purpose. Why we took ourselves away from here to there, from there to here, to learn without fear and to help without condition. feel that connection and knowing that road ahead with contrition. So there you are, and thank you again, Esther, for the wonderful piano playing, and of course the composition, which she's at great pains to stress to me, was all inspired by this sort of free-form piano work that came through. And at the end of this episode, or sometime during this episode anyway, I hope to do the second song, because in the last 24 hours, Neil Peart's been very busy again, and he's been keeping me awake, which is actually a bit annoying, because I have to say the podcast is only supposed to take about an hour of my life every week, but certainly in the last few weeks, so much has been coming through. I've been spending quite a few hours doing all of this, and it's also coming into my dream state more than I'm particularly happy with. So as I mentioned to my friend Linda in America, I'm almost going to have to get the doorman out again and see if I can ask Titan to sort of restrict this, because it cannot become too much of a part of your life. Otherwise, you start losing focus with other things. But I'd love to hear your feedback about what Esther, myself, and Neil, and potentially the anonymous person who was probably the subject of last week's podcast, and the grieving mother who kind of came in right at the very beginning of all those thoughts. And nothing, of course, I think is a coincidence. This week, we meet another coincidence. And this is a feeling, I had a few nights ago. And I was pretty sure that we were going to be having a subject all about regret. And I most definitely will ask Neil Peart to come along again and see if we can confirm that and what's that about. And again, coincidentally, if you want to call it coincidentally, words started coming through to me again. And I have written them down. Again, they're very much a proof. It was these constant thoughts that were coming through to me. And I will read that a little bit later, I think, because right now I think it's probably more important to start talking about regret. And again, coincidentally, I receive another email from Linda in America, who tells me a very, very tragic story about a friend of hers. And she doesn't mind me sharing this with you, and I certainly will, because it's certainly what we're all about today, I think, and I absolutely believe that this came to me for a reason. Now, Linda does send me quite a lot of information about quite a few subjects, and most things I can't really deal with because she's relating this from other people, and I would never get involved in anything unless a person directly asked me to help them. But in this case, Linda obviously knew this lady and wants me to see what I can do, and I will certainly try that in a minute. But for now, I will read you the email that she sent me this morning, which is extremely moving, and it's a very dramatic story, and it's a very tragic story. She said that today, she wrote tomorrow, but today, the 22nd of May, is the 1-year anniversary of my friend Carrie. She died from an accidental medical overdose. She is her friend who had over a dozen different personalities or identities, and we became friends when she was 18 years old, and at that time she had 4 separate entities. Now, I looked this up this morning as soon as I had this email, because I've not really heard of this particular disorder, and it seems to be a very rare but very valid disorder. And obviously Carrie suffered from this. And Linda continues that she went out to breakfast with her the Saturday before she died at the age of 31. And Carrie shared with Linda the profiles of over a dozen different entities. Now, the rest of the email is I won't bother reading because I think it's pretty personal, but it describes some of Carrie's mental health issues. It also describes that she was a published poet, and that her pieces were always dark, and she had a difficulty reading them. And Carrie also had a cat called Sumac, who was always referred to as a soulmate. So Linda's asking me 3 questions, and really I've answered some of these before, such as, can people actually be soulmates with their pets? I think I have done an episode on that, and Titan's discussed that in quite a lot of detail. She also asks, as this is the anniversary, is Carrie aware of the grief we have missing her? Can she hear us when we talk to her? And the third aspect of it were the separate personalities of Carrie. Was she aware that if these were different entities within her soul group? Now, that's a very interesting question. So those questions are out there. I will just take it as it comes. First of all, I will go away for 5 minutes or so and see if Titan's ready to come through. It'll be a matter of seconds for you. And let's see if we can't help Linda with these questions. Okay, so I am back, and I feel that Titan is here. Thank you very much for coming by. It's been a few weeks since we've made contact, although I know you've been contacting me in my sleep a lot and at other times. So thank you for being close to me. Titan, is there anything that I could pass through to Linda in response to the questions that she's asking me? She said again, and that I've mentioned before in a previous episode about the souls of animals and pets. So we don't need to do that again. But she says it's very interesting how in history and in literature, in fantasy literature, she's saying, it's been quite often mentioned that an animal somehow exists as an extension of our human psyche. And that is for a reason, because, as was discussed before, all animals, in fact all things, have what you could describe as a soul in various forms of sophistication, although the human soul and souls of higher sentient beings tends to be a very much distinct and more advanced form of collections of energy. They resonate at a completely different frequency. They represent different colors of light. They have completely different experiences. They have a different goal, indeed, and different purposes. However, to have a cat or a dog with a personality and with a soul is, of course, completely right and completely valid, given what she says she's just said. And as far as a human being becoming a pet or being part of a soul consciousness together, she says that's a very interesting subject and slightly more complex. Although the animal will not have a soul in the same way as we will have a soul, and it is not going through the same process as we do after we die, an animal is very much part of your soul group, and very often that animal soul entity can reoccur not only with you, and now she's actually reminding me that Neil Peart has what seemed to me a black Labrador, and we can talk to him about that later maybe, with him right now for whatever reason. And I have no idea whether Neil had a black Labrador in life or not. Maybe he had a completely different animal or no animal at all. However, she is saying that the choice is there, and for whatever reason, you can have an animal, a pet, a comfort, if you like, during your life and after your life. And very often that comfort has so much of your personal energy and feeling invested into it and not just yours. People in your soul community have also been part of this, if you like, pet soul, that it embodies a huge amount of energy from different souls, and therefore has a very strong soul and a very strong resonance. And you can be incredibly gifted at times to have a pet on earth that has that energy that has not just been created by its relationship with the current owner, but with many owners throughout what we would call history, but also simultaneously and uniquely sometimes in other realms. So yes, most definitely she's saying that you are a soulmate in the wider sense, but it's not as if it's equivalent soulmate. Yeah, I think that's very clear. Thank you for that one. And as far as Carrie, is there anything you could say about Carrie? She's saying to me, she's saying to me that I know full well what's going to happen. Well, yes, I don't know full well, to be honest, Titan, but I've had a feeling, a very strong feeling. I don't believe all these things that happen to me are a coincidence. And she said that it's not a coincidence. And for Linda to contact me today, which is an Earth environment, and it's a time that relates to Carrie, who is no longer on Earth, but it's a date that means something. There is a tremendous amount of energy invested in that. She's saying to me, it's no wonder that in our dimension we celebrate births, we celebrate deaths and dates and significant things in our lives with dates. And that's the first thing she wants to say about this, is that a date, a number, can become extremely significant, again, because of all the energy you associate with that particular date and the person that it's associated with. And it enables that date and that to have a huge amounts of memories and energy associated with it. And it can almost take a life of itself in that respect. She's throwing at me Christmas, of course, and Christmas is one of those times that is an extremely powerful date, certainly in the Christian calendar. And she's reminding me actually of a conversation I had with my own children a few days ago, which is true, where we were talking about Christmas. And even if they don't believe in Father Christmas anymore, you cannot help but feel the tremendous energy and the collective feeling of love and other emotions such as sympathy for those who are not as fortunate as you. Also feelings of closeness to a Christ story, if that is what you believe, or whatever religion that you have. So the 25th of December or the 24th of December are an incredibly incredibly important dates to people. And yeah, I think Titan is quite right. And Titan is saying to me, yes, the date is imbued with massive amounts of energy and importance by so many millions of people over so many years, that date or those dates have become almost alive because of the significance that's been placed on them. But that was difficult. I don't know about Carrie, but I'm getting a feeling, and I have no idea what happened with the overdose, but I'm getting a feeling of, I've had this before, a sort of a feeling of not being able to swallow again. And I don't know, for all I know, there was another way that she sadly overdosed. But and it's coming through to me that there is a tremendous amount of regret here. And Titan is showing me, she's showing me that in the terms of Carrie and everything that she chose for her life, if you want to talk about mental illness, she says, let us talk about multiple personality disorder. It is an extremely rare disease. Titan is saying that I did Google it, yes. And it said when you Google it, you'll see a medical explanation for it. And there are very, very many medical explanations for a lot of things that are not necessarily medically based, but because we cannot understand them in our science at the moment, in our desire to help people, in order to be able to, as humans, quantify everything and put everything in its box so we can handle it better. And she says we've talked about that many times. We tend to try to explain a multiple personality disorder as a disorder of the mind or the brain without actually giving it the credit, she says, of it being something greater than that. She said, we have talked before about demonic possession or so-called demonic possession. We have talked before about entities that can walk into your mind or step into your mind, that can take over at periods of either tremendous anxiety or even when you are taking drugs. And she says certainly with Carrie, the drugs that she was taking in an effort to help her were probably having the opposite effect and would actually allow more and more of this information to come through to her. She is saying that Carrie would not have been possessed by other entities, but she would have been highly psychic, and probably was highly psychic since she was a little girl. Titan, you know exactly that, because Linda did follow that up with another letter to me saying that she was very psychic as a little girl. And Titan is saying that children particularly at a very young age can have tremendous access to information and tremendous ability to be psychic. And it's not until they get older that they are told by their parents or society in general that this isn't an appropriate way of behaving, and they learn to shut down and be quiet. She's actually reminding me again of a conversation that I had with my daughters, and it was a suggestion, I think, again from Linda, that maybe my daughters are very, very psychic, and they perhaps inherited something through my grandmother, my mother, and me. And I had never thought of that as being something that might have been upsetting them in some way or other, which has caused, obviously, some issues, some psychological issues that my daughters have been having. So I did actually, when I came back from the United Kingdom at the weekend, I did ask at the dinner table, because I didn't want it to be any great mystery. And my wife is extremely cynical about this stuff. She doesn't believe in anything like this, which is fair enough. And I just casually threw it into the lunchtime conversation and asked, have either of you had anything you might consider to be psychic? And I'm only mentioning this because, as Titan says, children can be tremendously aware, but mainly you won't talk about it because they either don't know how to talk about it or they feel it would be silly to talk about it. But Tessa, my daughter, immediately said, yes, it's happened to me ever since I was tiny. It started when I was very young, and I could hear Grandma, which was my wife's mother, who died sadly in 2011. Grandma, who she never met except as a baby. Her grandma died very shortly after she was born. But she says she hears her name, Tessa, in her ear, quite often, and in her room at night when she's trying to sleep or is asleep. But she often hears and is very comforted by that her grandmother is visiting her. Now that came out of Tessa completely unprompted by me. And then I looked to my left to my other daughter, Tara, and she looked me straight in the eye and she said, Dad, don't you remember? It always used to happen in yours and Mummy's bedroom when we were very young and we would stay in the bed. And I said, no, I really don't remember that. And then Tessa looked at me across the table and said, you don't remember that? And I said, no, I don't remember that. Well, Tara reminded me that she often saw somebody walking around the room at night, very similar to the experiences that I had as a child. And I was really taken aback by that because I thought, whoa, it's coming to the next generation. So Titan is there. Thank you for letting me interrupt you, Titan, and tell that story. But yes, I certainly understand what it is about children. Yes, and she's just saying we're in the same situation here with Carrie. And Carrie had many issues because she found it very difficult to cope with all the different things that she was experiencing. She would have a lot of people who would visit her and speak to her. And none of this would have been malevolent or evil. None of it would have been unkind. But that, with a combination of drugs and perhaps things that had happened to her. And I'm feeling like crying now because something awful has happened to Carrie when she was young. A terrible thing. And terrible things had been happening to her, which has caused such grief, but also she's saying regret. So she says, hold on to yourself. But that sense of regret that was very strong in her because of perhaps a lost childhood and an inability to cope with her life caused her to be able to accept what she considered to be almost more friendly people into her life. She says they by no means were not necessarily all friendly, but she enjoyed the company of it. But this became such a problem as the numbers of people came through. She became unable to deal with all these visitors. Okay, I understand what you're saying, Titan. So you're saying to me, Titan, that this is almost a case of overkill. Too many. Yeah, she's saying completely. It's too many coming in at too often, which can cause massive confusion. And there's really not a lot you can do. And medicine does not help. In fact, medicine can also make it worse. Another coincidence, I have to tell you, Titan, which you know, the listeners won't know, is that Linda mentioned that Carrie was also a poet. And I now know about what's coming up next. So Titan said, yes. He said, these words were passed through to you through an entity that is a collective entity, which Carrie is a part of. And Carrie is the person who's going to help you with this week's song. And later on, as you move into the next area that Neil wishes to speak to me about, the following poem you must bear in mind, because Neil is going to try to take me, I think almost wordlessly again, into another area which is essential part of the learning that we all have to do during our life. Titan says, yes, it's the learning that we learn in life, but we don't always learn it in life. We don't learn it in multiple lifetimes. But ultimately, if you do not learn to handle regret or grief, you are destined to have to repeat a process in order that you can try and learn the lesson in different ways, in different lives, in different situations. And I think Carrie has written this poem, which I've scribbled down. I hope I've got it right. Titan says I should read it because these are her last words where she wishes to convey a certain sense of regret about what happened to her in her life. Okay, but Titan, what about her situation now? And he said, that'll be something that we can discuss later on when Neil comes along, because she is very active and has always been very active in helping people, but helping particularly children. And since we are on the subject of animals, she has also been very important in the help and the development and creation of animal souls, and has experienced that for as long as you could ever imagine. Okay, all right. So first of all, then, Titan, I will read the words. I think we say goodbye now, and then when we come back, I will see if I can get hold of Neil. Is that the best way to do this? And she said, yes, that's absolutely fine. Okay, thank you very much, Titan. Thank you, goodbye. So, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read these words that came to me. Regret. All the things I left behind, and all the things I am yet to find, all the people I hurt or harmed, with thoughts and fists that were so unkind, all the places I never saw, the feeling that I should have done much more, all the jobs I never took, and the ones I did but was never sure, all the time I wasted, wondering where the past had gone, all the moments lost I treasured, but time moved on, all the love I gave, but it was never enough, all the love I wasted on useless stuff, all the things I should have said, all the things I should not have said, all the decisions I made, but never progressed, all the plans I laid, but always digressed, all the tunes I never wrote, all the words I could never quote, all the friends I let down, those who had so much to say, those I had promised to meet along the way. Now I am gone, with space to reason why, learning again to plan a better way to try. Choices I will make again and again, each life makes me better by them. My soul knows the lessons to find that serves to influence my mind. Well, yeah, I mean, when those words came to me, I had absolutely no idea that that could be some influence from Carrie. And if that is the case, thank you, Carrie, and this on the anniversary of your passing is very profound to me. I need to take a break now, just to pull myself together a little bit. And when I come back, I'm going to ask Neil to come through. And before the end of the episode, I want to see if he can't lead me on a little bit further and perhaps inspire me again with some music as of last time. And very much hope that Esther or whoever is interested in this project could help me with the music and suggest a way of turning it into something as beautiful as Esther managed to accomplish. So I will be back shortly. Okay, so I took a little while, and I'm very glad that Neil is back. Hello, Mr. Neil Peart. He says hi. He says, look, I want to say something straight away. He's saying he wants to tell me something. He says that this is really very important. He says that everybody listening has lost someone. Everyone listening will lose someone. And we discussed grief, he said, in a lot of detail last week. And he says he was showing me that because that's just one of the many, if you like, halls of contemplation, he's saying, that he's been exposed to. And his purpose at the moment is to move me through the various halls, to take me on a journey, the places that a soul that is preparing to either reincarnate or to move further on into other dimensions find themselves in order to prepare them for areas that they need to work on in future lives. He said most definitely this week he wants us to talk about regret. And he wants to quickly to describe what regret is and the purpose of it. He says that we will all experience regret. And he mentions Carrie as having regrets in a way that are expressed in her poem. But he says that he's very happy to leave that interpretation of what she was saying to other people because it wasn't just Carrie in the poem. He feels that a lot of his thoughts were in there as well. But he's very happy to share co-ownership, he says. He says that's the beauty of where he is now. He has no sense of personal ownership. He loves the idea of people being able to join in. He says he's always been very, very collaborative, and he feels that in his life as a musician, the best stuff came out of him in collaboration with the guys he worked with. In this particular case, he says if we move on from that poem, which he feels is a good stage setting, he says, for where we're going next. And we're now going to an area where souls who still carry regret and haven't learnt how to deal with their regret spend time and discuss and learn with higher entities and people with experience how to overcome that in order to move towards the next areas. He's saying that come along. He says you won't see anything again because these areas, as I said, he said, they're so high up, they're so in such a dimension that you cannot see. Most of all, you cannot hear anything either, but you'll be able to feel me. And I will try, he says again, like last week, to channel some of those feelings through music for you. And he says he hopes that will be, if you like, the second piece that is going to be part of this long journey, this journey of music. And he said he would love it if that piece that would come out of this week's episode would be called Proof of Guilt. Okay. So you've used the word proof, Neil, quite a lot. I mean, can you explain that to me a little bit? He said yes. He said when he first contacted me, he said that there would be a huge backlash eventually, which he said he'll help prepare me for. There will be a sense amongst the people who knew him when he was alive that they don't believe any of the things that are coming through now, and they will require proof. And he said, I told you, he said in the very early episodes, that I would provide that proof to you. Well, you had the first proof last week, and you'll have a proof this week, and we're going to, by the end of it, probably have many more proofs. And at that point, he will feel that that's more than enough proof for people to understand. Okay, so I basically can't see anything. So I think it's now time to see if I can't get some music. Oh, well, there we are. So that was very interesting. I mean, I don't know, something came up to me in the middle of that, and I was playing something that I felt was quite rhythmic, but then I needed to make a tapping thing. It was like da da da. It was a really strong feeling that it was almost like a drum. So let me see if I can get back to Neil on that. Oh, so Neil, thank you for giving me that. I hope I gave some sense. He's saying it was brilliant. He said, look, all I'm trying to do is to give you something that will inspire musicians who can then turn that into the music based on the lyrics that I provide. He says you're providing a foundation, and he's saying it's very much the way that Esther mentioned to you, that you're merely improvising through a feeling that we're sending you, and you're not getting every note right. And, that's not to be unexpected. That you're not a musician, he said. But he's actually saying you're the best we've got at the moment. All right, well, thank you. And thank God I've got Esther who can perhaps make something good of that. And, of course, I extend that invitation to anybody out there who'd love to help with this project. Again, I was really surprised the massive feedback I've had. I thought I'd lose listeners. In fact, we've gained listeners. So I think this is obviously resonating with people. Thank you so much, Neil. We've kind of run out of time. I think we have to understand now that regret and grief are somewhat related. He's coming through and he says, I just want to finish off, though. He says, by talking about the place where we analyze our regret. We all have regrets. It's part of being human. It's one of the strongest forces, he says, in the universe, in all existence. There is always a sense of regret about things that were or were not achieved or done. And he personally, as a man, had huge regrets, but equally had tremendous sense of satisfaction that he managed to overcome his regrets. And for that reason, he feels that his life and the way it progressed and eventually ended, he would love people to see as an example of overcoming regret and anxiety and grief and making something really positive of his life. But he says that equally there will be huge regrets left behind for people who knew him. And he is also sorry for the plan that led to that. But he knew in the taking of the life that he was, that he had a lot to learn. And, dealing with and processing his regrets and dealing with grief was very, very important to him in that life. For now, he says that in this hall that we are in, although I can't see anything except a sort of a vaguely coloured mist and a tremendous sense of community, and I can't hear anything. He says the vibrations that are coming through that he can feel and see that I cannot are experienced by the souls who are learning to understand the regret in their previous life and their previous lives, and are learning things that they could have done differently, or learning how they should plan their next life in order to confront situations where they can deal with regret in the future. He said regret can come in many forms, and regret will be placed in the life of many people in order for them to overcome it. Okay, thank you very much, Neil. We're coming up to 45 minutes, and it's nearly my hour that I give every week to this. But I hope to see you next week with a whole new subject. And he said, oh, I'll be sure. He said, sure, no problem. He said, I'll definitely be there. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.